What if the voice you hear most often in your life is not coming from your parents, your partner, your friends, or the world? What if it is your own voice? The voice you hear when you make a mistake, the voice that speaks when you look in the mirror, the voice that appears when you are tired, the voice that tells you whether you are safe, worthy, capable, lovable, or failing. You may spend years trying to change your circumstances while speaking to yourself in a way that quietly destroys your confidence. You can build a better career, create healthier relationships, improve your finances, change your appearance, reach your goals, and still feel miserable if the person you live with every moment of every day yourself constantly tells you that you are not enough. Many people believe transformation begins with discipline, but sometimes transformation begins with language. The words you repeatedly say to yourself become expectations. Expectations become beliefs. Beliefs influence decisions. Decisions become habits, and habits shape the life you experience. So today I want to show you how to change the way you speak to yourself. Not with empty affirmations, not by pretending everything is positive, not by telling yourself that pain doesn't exist, but by developing an inner voice that is honest, compassionate, grounded, and strong enough to help you grow. Because there is a profound difference between accountability and self-attack. There is a difference between saying, I made a mistake, and I am a mistake. There is a difference between, I need to do better, and I am never good enough. There is a difference between, this relationship is hurting me, and nobody could ever love me. The first statements describe an experience. The second statements turn an experience into an identity. And when you repeatedly turn painful experiences into identity statements, you begin living inside a story that may not be true. So, the first way I want you to talk to yourself is this. I am experiencing something difficult. I am not the difficulty itself. Say that slowly. I am experiencing anxiety. I am not anxiety. I am experiencing failure. I am not a failure. I am experiencing rejection. I am not rejection. I am experiencing grief. I am not broken. This sounds simple, but language creates psychological distance. Instead of becoming completely identified with an emotion, you begin observing it. And when you can observe something, you have more freedom in how you respond. This is especially important when emotions become intense. You don't have to argue with yourself. You don't have to say, I shouldn't feel this. Instead, something in me is feeling this. That one phrase creates space. Something in me is afraid. Something in me feels rejected. Something in me is overwhelmed. Something in me wants to run. And then you can become curious. Why? What is this feeling trying to protect? What does it need? What is it afraid will happen? You are no longer fighting yourself. You are listening to yourself. And that changes everything. The second way to speak to yourself is, what would I say to someone I deeply love? Imagine your closest friend comes to you and says, I made a terrible mistake. Would you look at them and say, you are pathetic. You always ruin everything. You will never get your life together. Probably not. You would probably say, you made a mistake. Let's understand what happened. What can you learn? You can repair what can be repaired. You are still worthy. But when it comes to ourselves, many of us become brutally cruel. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to another human being, and somehow we call this motivation. But cruelty is not the same as accountability. You do not need to humiliate yourself in order to grow. In fact, shame can keep you trapped because when people believe they are fundamentally defective, they often avoid the very things that could help them change. So, the next time you make a mistake, try saying, I don't like what happened, but I can learn from it. Not, I am an idiot. Not, I always ruin everything. Just, this didn't go the way I wanted. What is mine to learn from this? That is accountability without self-hatred. And perhaps that is the kind of voice your nervous system needs. The third sentence I want you to practice is, I don't have to solve everything today. Think about how often you create suffering by demanding immediate answers. You need to know what happens next. You need to know whether the relationship will work. You need to know whether the job is right. You need to know whether you are making the correct decision. You need certainty. But human beings do not get certainty. We get moments, we get choices, we get information, we get the next step. The mind hates uncertainty because uncertainty feels like a lack of control. So it starts producing more thoughts, more scenarios, more predictions, more questions. And eventually, thinking becomes exhausting without creating clarity. This is where you can say, I don't have to solve my entire future today, I can deal with the next step. That is not avoidance. It is proportion. Your mind may be asking for the answer to a problem that life has not finished unfolding yet. Let life reveal some of the information. You don't need to know the ending before taking the next step. The fourth way to speak to yourself is, my needs matter too. This sentence is incredibly important for people who have spent their lives caring for everyone else. Maybe you learn to ask, what does everyone need from me? But not, what do I need? You learn to keep people comfortable, to prevent conflict, to be available, to help, to rescue, to stay strong. And eventually, your own needs become invisible even to you. You become very good at understanding everyone else's emotional world. But when someone asks, what do you want? You don't know. You may think, whatever you want. I'm fine. It's okay. Don't worry about me. But your body knows. Your exhaustion knows. Your resentment knows. Your irritability knows. Your anxiety knows. Sometimes what we call stress is partly the accumulated cost of repeatedly saying yes while something inside us is saying no. So tell yourself, my needs matter too, not more than everyone else's, not less, too. My needs matter too. I can care about you and still care about myself. I can love you and still have boundaries. I can help you without destroying myself. That is not selfishness, that is balance. The fifth way to speak to yourself is, I am allowed to say no. For some people, this sentence produces immediate guilt, because no may have become associated with rejection. Maybe you learned that being good meant being agreeable, that love meant availability, that belonging required adaptation. So every time someone asks for something, your automatic answer becomes yes. Even when you're exhausted, even when you don't want to, even when you know you cannot do it. And later, resentment appears. But instead of recognizing the boundary you needed, you blame yourself for feeling resentful. The healthier conversation is, I am allowed to have limits. No is a complete answer. I do not need to earn the right to protect my energy. And understand something important. The discomfort you feel after setting a boundary does not automatically mean the boundary is wrong. Sometimes it means the boundary is new. Your nervous system has to learn that you can disappoint someone and remain safe. You can say no and still be loving. You can make another person uncomfortable without becoming a bad person. That is a lesson many people spend years learning. The sixth sentence is, I don't have to earn rest. How many people spend their lives exhausted because they believe rest must be deserved? They tell themselves, when I finish everything, I'll rest. When have you ever finished everything? There is always another message, another deadline, another responsibility, another goal, another problem. So rest is permanently postponed, and your body becomes the place where the debt accumulates. Rest is not a reward for being productive enough. Rest is part of being human. You don't charge your phone only after proving that the battery deserves electricity. You restore it because it needs restoration. The same is true for you. Tell yourself, I am allowed to pause before I collapse. I am allowed to rest before everything is finished. I do not have to prove my worth through exhaustion. This does not mean avoiding responsibilities. It means respecting the limits of the system carrying them. And perhaps many people don't need another productivity strategy. They need permission to stop treating themselves like machines. The seventh sentence is, I can feel this without acting on it. This is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. An emotion can be real without becoming a command. You can feel anger without sending the message. You can feel anxiety without checking the phone 50 times. You can feel jealousy without acting destructively. You can feel fear without immediately running. You can feel the urge to withdraw without disappearing from everyone. A feeling gives you information. It does not necessarily give you instructions. So when something intense rises inside you, say, I can feel this, and wait. I don't need to act immediately. Let me understand what is happening first. That pause can change relationships. It can change decisions. It can change your life. Because many regrets come from actions taken at the peak of an emotion. The emotion passes. The consequence remains. Your ability to pause creates freedom between feeling and action. And that is where choice lives. The eighth sentence is, this feeling may be familiar, but familiar does not mean true. This is particularly important when your present life activates old emotional patterns. Someone takes a little longer to respond. You immediately think, they're leaving. Someone criticizes you. You think, I'm worthless. Someone becomes upset. You think, I have done something terrible. You make a mistake. You think, I always fail. The reaction may feel automatic because your brain has learned an association. But automatic does not mean accurate. The nervous system sometimes responds to the present through the lens of past experience. So, tell yourself, this feeling is real, but it may not be telling me the whole truth. I can check the facts. What is happening now? What am I remembering emotionally? What evidence do I actually have? This creates a bridge between emotion and reality. You respect the feeling without surrendering your judgment to it. The ninth way to speak to yourself is, I am not behind. This may be one of the most important sentences in a world built around comparison. Someone else is married. Someone else has a business. Someone else owns a house. Someone else is traveling. Someone else looks successful. Someone else seems happy. And you start measuring your life against a carefully edited version of theirs. Then you tell yourself, I'm behind. But behind whom? There is no universal human timeline. People begin again at different ages. They recover at different speeds. They discover themselves at different times. Some people achieve success early and then realize they built a life they don't actually want. Others struggle for years and later create something deeply meaningful. Your timeline is not a moral judgment. You are not failing because your life doesn't look like someone else's. And if you constantly tell yourself that you are behind, you will make decisions from panic. You will rush relationships, rush careers, rush healing, rush your identity. And when you rush everything, you may build a life that looks successful but feels foreign. So, say, I am where I am. This is my current chapter. I can take the next step without hating where I am starting from. That is a healthier form of ambition. The 10th sentence is, I can begin again. Many people believe mistakes become permanent identities. You made a bad decision. You wasted years. You trusted the wrong person. You chose the wrong career. You stayed too long. You left too early. And then your mind says, it is too late. But life contains beginnings inside endings. You can apologize. You can change direction. You can learn something new. You can rebuild trust. You can start exercising. You can begin therapy. You can leave an unhealthy pattern. You can have a difficult conversation. You can create a different future from this moment. You don't have to erase the past. You simply have to stop allowing the past to decide every next move. Say, I cannot change what happened, but I can influence what happens next. That is enough. Now I want to take this deeper. Because there is another kind of language we use against ourselves that sounds harmless. I'm just like this. I'm an anxious person. I'm terrible with relationships. I've always been insecure. I can't trust anyone. I'm just not disciplined. Be careful with these sentences. They transform behaviors into identities. Instead of, I have been struggling with anxiety, you say, I am an anxious person. Instead of, I have trouble trusting people after what happened, you say, I can't trust anyone. The first language leaves room for change. The second closes the door. You are not required to deny your patterns. Name them accurately. I have learned to expect rejection. I have developed a habit of overthinking. I struggle with boundaries. I tend to become self-critical. These statements describe patterns. Patterns can change. Identity statements can become cages. Now consider how you talk to yourself after failure. Most people go one of two directions. They either attack themselves or they completely avoid responsibility. But there is a third way, compassionate honesty. You can say, this hurt, I made a mistake, I contributed to this, I don't like the consequences, I need to repair what I can, and I am still worthy of compassion while I do that. That is maturity. You don't have to choose between accountability and kindness. You can have both. And perhaps this is where a deeper understanding of healing begins. You don't heal by creating a perfect internal voice that never criticizes you. You heal by becoming aware of the voice that hurts you and learning not to automatically believe it. When your mind says, nobody wants you, pause. Is that a fact or a fear? When it says you always fail, ask always. When it says you ruined everything, ask what exactly happened. When it says you are too much, ask too much for whom? When it says you are not enough, ask according to what standard? This does not mean turning every thought into an argument. It means creating enough space to question automatic beliefs. Thoughts are not commands. Thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are mental events, and you can choose which ones deserve your attention. Now I want you to try a practice. Tonight, take a piece of paper. Divide it into two columns. In the first column, write what I usually say to myself. In the second, what I would say to someone I love. Then write down the harshest sentences you regularly use against yourself. Be honest. Maybe, I'm so stupid. Nobody really wants me. I should be further ahead. I always mess things up. I'm too sensitive. I'm lazy. I'll never change. Now look at those sentences. Would you say them to someone you deeply love who was struggling? Probably not. So ask, why do I believe I deserve less compassion than the people I love? That question may reveal something important. Perhaps you were taught that criticism produces improvement. Perhaps you were praised only when you achieved. Perhaps mistakes were met with shame. Perhaps vulnerability was dismissed. Perhaps you learned that being hard on yourself was how you stayed safe. Understanding where the voice came from can make it easier to stop obeying it. You do not have to hate the voice. It may have been trying to protect you. The inner critic often believes that if it attacks you first, nobody else can hurt you as much. It believes that perfection will keep you safe. It believes that shame will prevent future mistakes. But you can thank it and still choose another voice. You can say, I understand why you're afraid, but attacking me isn't helping. Let's solve the actual problem. That is how you become emotionally safer inside yourself. And perhaps this is the greatest shift of all. Stop asking yourself, what's wrong with me? Start asking, what happened? What did I learn? What am I carrying? What do I need? What can I choose differently now? These questions move you from shame toward understanding. And understanding creates possibilities. If you feel overwhelmed, don't say, I can't handle my life. Say, I have too much on me right now. What can be reduced? If you feel lonely, don't say, nobody cares about me. Say, I need meaningful connection. Where can I create it? If you're anxious, don't say something is wrong with me. Say, my system is activated. Let me slow down and understand why. If you failed, don't say I'm a failure. Say, this didn't work. What does it teach me? If you are exhausted, don't say I'm lazy. Say, my body may need recovery. This is not positive thinking. It is accurate thinking with compassion. And that difference matters. Because false positivity says, everything is wonderful. Compassionate honesty says, this is hard, and I can face it. False positivity says, nothing is wrong. Compassionate honesty says, something is wrong, and I am willing to address it without attacking myself. That is the voice you want, the voice that tells the truth without destroying the person hearing it. And if this message speaks to you, write 777 inches the comments. Let 777 represent a simple promise. I will become more careful with the way I speak to myself. Not because words are magical, but because repeated words shape repeated beliefs, and repeated beliefs influence repeated choices. Today, notice one sentence you say to yourself that you would never say to someone you love. Catch it, pause, change it, not into something fake, into something true. I am struggling, I can learn, this hurts, I can take one step, I don't know yet, I can find out, I made a mistake, I can repair what I can, I am tired, I am allowed to rest, I am afraid, I can slow down before I decide. These sentences may seem small, but your inner dialogue is happening thousands of times over the course of your life. A small change repeated consistently becomes a different internal environment, and the way you speak to yourself becomes the emotional climate you live in. Imagine spending the rest of your life in a room with someone who constantly criticized you. Now imagine that person was you. Would you feel safe? Would you feel creative? Would you take healthy risks? Would you recover quickly from failure? Would you trust yourself? Now imagine the voice changed. Not indulgent, not dishonest, just compassionate. A voice that says, we can handle this. Let's slow down. What do we actually know? What do we need? What can we learn? Let's try again. That voice can become a foundation, and perhaps that is the real transformation. Not that your life suddenly becomes perfect, but that you stop becoming your own source of unnecessary suffering. The world will criticize you sometimes. People will disappoint you. You will make mistakes. Things will go wrong. Life will remain unpredictable. You cannot control all of that, but you can work toward not adding another layer of cruelty inside yourself. You can become the person who stays with yourself when things become difficult. The person who doesn't abandon themselves after failure. The person who doesn't turn rejection into proof of unworthiness. The person who doesn't turn exhaustion into shame. The person who doesn't turn a painful chapter into an identity. And perhaps that is what people mean when they talk about self-compassion. Not saying, I'm perfect, but saying, I am human. And because I am human, I will make mistakes. I will have difficult emotions. I will sometimes react poorly. I will sometimes disappoint people. I will sometimes disappoint myself. And still, I do not have to become my own enemy. So from today forward, pay attention to your internal language. When you hear, I should be better, try, I am learning. When you hear, I always mess things up, try, this did not go well, what can I change? When you hear, I am not enough, try, I am struggling with worth right now, but my worth is not determined by this moment. When you hear, I should be somewhere else by now, try, this is where I am and I can begin from here. When you hear, I can't do this, try, this feels overwhelming. What is the next manageable step? When you hear, nobody understands me, try, I need deeper connection. Who is safe enough for honesty? When you hear, I have to handle everything alone, try, I can be capable and still receive support. These are not magic phrases, they are mental pathways. And pathways become easier to walk when you use them repeatedly. So don't expect your inner critic to disappear overnight. Expect to notice it sooner. Expect to question it more often. Expect to replace some of its messages. Expect to become more familiar with another voice, a wiser voice, a calmer voice, a more compassionate voice, a voice that says, we don't have to rush. We don't have to prove anything right now. We can face the truth. We can ask for help. we can set a boundary, we can begin again. That is the voice I want you to cultivate. Because your life is not only shaped by what happens to you, it is also shaped by the meaning you give what happens. And your inner dialogue is one of the places where that meaning is created. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself 3 questions. What was difficult today? What did I need today? And how would I speak to someone I love who had lived my day? Then give yourself that same compassion. Not because you are fragile, because you are human. Not because you should avoid accountability, because accountability works better when it is not mixed with hatred. Not because everything is okay, because even when things are not okay, you deserve to remain on your own side. And perhaps that is where your life begins to change. Not when you control more, not when you achieve more, not when everyone finally approves, but when the conversation inside you becomes different. When you stop saying, "What is wrong with me?" and start saying, "What do I need?" When you stop saying, "Why can't I be like everyone else?" and start saying, "What is true for me?" When you stop saying, "I should already be healed," and start saying, "I am still learning." When you stop saying, "I have to do everything alone," and start saying, "I am allowed to receive." When you stop saying, "I am not enough," and start saying, "I do not need to earn my right to exist," that is not weakness. That is a new relationship with yourself. And perhaps the greatest gift you can give yourself is not another goal. It is becoming a safe place to return to when life becomes difficult. Because there will be difficult days, there will be uncertainty, there will be endings, there will be mistakes, there will be moments when you doubt yourself. And when those moments come, I want you to remember, do not become the person who attacks you when you are already hurting. Become the person who stays, the person who listens, the person who tells the truth, the person who helps you take the next step, the person who reminds you, "This is difficult, but I am still here. I don't know what happens next, but I can meet it. I made a mistake, but I can learn. I am hurting, but I am not broken. I am changing, and I don't have to hate who I used to be." That is the voice that can change a life. And perhaps the most important sentence of all is this: I am on my own side. Say it again. I am on my own side, not against other people, not above them, not beneath them. Just finally, consciously, and compassionately on your own side. Because the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.